The assignment. John checked his watch as he waited in the sterile briefing room of Archangel Security Services, a private firm known for its discretion and efficiency in handling sensitive interstellar matters. The digital clock on the wall flicked to 0800 just as the door hissed open, admitting his new boss, Commander Helen Zhao. "Morning, John," Helen greeted, her voice brisk as she set a holographic projector on the table. "Glad to see you're punctual. Take a seat." John nodded and complied, his military habits still ingrained after 2 years of civilian life. He watched as Helen activated the projector, and the air above it shimmered into the image of a striking alien figure. "This is Mira," Helen began, gesturing to the hologram. "She belongs to the Ilari, a species from the Outer Rim. Their societal structures are complex, revolving around ceremonial roles and artistic expression." John studied the hologram. Mira was ethereal, her skin shimmering with a subtle luminescence, eyes wide and expressive, framed by delicate, feather-like appendages instead of hair. "Your job," Helen continued, "is to guard her until her buyer arrives. It should be straightforward. No direct threats have been identified. However, the buyer is a high-profile collector from the Central Systems, and we can't afford any mistakes." "Why me?" John asked, curiosity piqued. "I mean, I'm flattered, but I'm hardly your only option." Helen smiled slightly. "You have a record of handling sensitive assignments with the right mix of diplomacy and security. Plus, your psych profile suggests you're good at adapting to unexpected situations. We need that flexibility." John nodded, processing the information. "And where is Mira now?" "She's being housed in our secure facility downtown. You'll live there to ensure her safety around the clock. Any personal effects you need can be brought in." "Sounds like a full-time gig," John remarked, running a hand through his hair. "What about interaction protocols? Am I just her warden?" "On the contrary," Helen said as she flicked through the slides, showing John the cultural norms and etiquettes of the Ilari. "You're to act as her liaison with the outside world. It's part of the service. Make her comfortable, show her respect, and keep her entertained. She's not a prisoner, John. Think of yourself as her host." The briefing continued with specifics, codes, meal preferences, emergency procedures, until John felt like his head was full of new rules and regulations. Finally, Helen concluded, "Any questions?" "Yeah, one," John said as he stood up. "When do I start?" "Now," Helen replied, checking her own watch. "She arrived last night. I wanted you briefed before you met her. I'll take you to her." The pair left the briefing room, walking through the clean, functional corridors of the Archangel facility. As they approached Myra's quarters, John felt an unusual nervousness, a mix of anticipation and the weight of responsibility. Helen stopped before a door guarded by 2 security officers and turned to John. "Remember, she's valuable not just in terms of money, but as a cultural icon to her people. Protect her, but also learn from her. This could be as much an education for you as it is a job." John nodded, taking a deep breath. "Understood." With a final nod of approval, Helen swiped her access card, and the door slid open. John stepped into a new world, his every sense alert, ready to meet Mira and begin his assignment. As he crossed the threshold, the chapter of his life as a simple security officer closed, and another, far more complex, began. Chapter 2. First Impressions. The door slid shut behind John with a quiet hiss, sealing him inside the spacious quarters designed to accommodate the alien guest. Mira stood by a large window that showcased the bustling cityscape below. She turned slowly to face him, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Mira. I'm John. I'll be staying with you to ensure your safety and comfort," he introduced himself, extending a hand in greeting, a gesture he suddenly realized might not be customary for her species. Mira looked at his hand, then up at his face, a small smile playing on her lips as she mimicked the action and shook his hand. "Hello, John. I understand your role. I hope we can coexist peacefully during my stay." Her voice was melodic, almost musical, and her accent made her words flow like a gentle river. John smiled, relieved by her acceptance. "I hope so too. If there's anything you need, feel free to tell me." Mira nodded and turned back to the window. "Your planet is very vibrant. Much noise, much movement. It's very different from Illa." John walked over to join her at the window. "It's a lot to take in, I guess. What's Illa like?" "It is quieter. More contemplative," she explained, searching for the right words. "Here, everything pulses with energy. It is both fascinating and overwhelming." Seeing an opportunity to learn more, John asked, "Would you like to explore the city? I mean, we'd have to be discreet, but it might help you adjust." Mira considered his offer for a moment before nodding. "Yes, I would like that very much. I want to understand where I am, and perhaps understand humans better." "Great," John said enthusiastically. "We'll plan something safe and simple for your first outing. Maybe a drive through the city? We can stay in the car if you prefer." "That sounds suitable," Mira agreed, her smile widening. As they continued to discuss the details, John's communicator buzzed. He excused himself and stepped away to answer. It was Helen, checking in. "Everything okay?" Helen's voice came through clearly. "Yes, all good. Mira seems to be settling in. We're even planning a short outing to help her acclimatize," John reported. "Good to hear," Helen replied. "Keep things low-key, and John, remember she's not just any VIP. She's an emissary of her people." "Understood," John assured her before ending the call. He returned to Mira, who was now examining some of the art pieces on the walls. "Interested in art?" John asked, following her gaze. "Yes, in Illa, I am trained in many forms. Art is a significant part of who I am," she explained, her fingers hovering delicately over a framed painting. "I'm no artist, but I enjoy a good piece of work when I see one," John admitted. "Maybe you could show me some of your art forms sometime." "I would like that," Mira said, turning to face him with a genuine expression of pleasure. "Art can bridge gaps between cultures." John nodded in agreement. "It sure can. And speaking of bridging gaps, how about we grab dinner? I can introduce you to some local cuisine." Myra's enthusiasm was evident as she replied, "Yes, I would appreciate that. It is another form of art, isn't it? Culinary art." "Exactly," John chuckled. "Let's go then. I know just the place." As they left the quarters, John felt a burgeoning sense of camaraderie. It was his job to guard Mira, but it was becoming more than that. He was becoming her guide and, perhaps, her friend. This assignment was shaping up to be unlike any other he had undertaken. Chapter 3. Cultural Exchange. John and Mira walked into a quaint restaurant tucked away from the city's usual hustle. Its ambient lighting and soft music provided a soothing atmosphere, quite the contrast to the buzzing streets they had just left behind. "This place serves a mix of local and international dishes," John explained as they took their seats at a secluded table. "It should give you a taste of what Earth has to offer without anything too overwhelming." Mira looked around with an air of curiosity, absorbing the details of the decor that blended different cultural elements seamlessly. "It is beautiful," she commented, "and a wise choice for our first outing." The waiter approached and handed them the menus. John recommended a few mild dishes, knowing that Myra's palate might not be accustomed to the more robust flavors. Mira listened intently, then ordered with surprising confidence, choosing dishes that John had described as popular among first-time visitors. As they waited for their meal, Mira turned the conversation towards John. "Tell me, John, what is it like to live among so many different cultures? Does it not create conflict?" "It can," John admitted, "but it also creates opportunities for learning and innovation. We find common ground in our shared experiences, like food, art, and music." Mira nodded thoughtfully. "In Illa, our culture is more homogeneous, but we are taught to appreciate beauty in all its forms. Perhaps that is why I am drawn to your art." Their food arrived, and the conversation turned lighter as Mira experienced her first taste of Earth cuisine. She was delighted by the flavors, and John enjoyed watching her reactions to each new dish. After dinner, they walked to a nearby cultural center hosting a photography exhibition. The theme was Unity in Diversity, showcasing works from various Earth artists depicting life in multicultural communities. "This reminds me of Illa's visual narratives," Mira remarked, pausing before a particularly striking image of a bustling market scene. "We use visuals to tell stories, too, though our techniques are different." John was intrigued. "Could you show me some examples? Maybe teach me a bit about Illa's art." Myra's face lit up at the request. "I would love to. Perhaps tomorrow we can arrange a space where I can share some of my work with you." "Let's do it," John agreed enthusiastically. The next day, John arranged for a room in their living quarters to be set up for Mira to display her art. She brought out several pieces she had created during her time on Earth, each piece a mesmerizing blend of Illa's traditional techniques and her own experiences on different planets. As Mira explained her techniques, John listened intently, absorbed in the depth and complexity of her creations. The session turned into an impromptu art class, with Mira guiding John through the basics of Illa's visual art forms. "Like this?" John asked, attempting to mimic Myra's delicate brush strokes on a digital canvas set up for the occasion. "Almost," Mira laughed gently. "It takes practice, but you have a good sense for it." The afternoon passed in a blur of creativity and shared laughter. It was clear that what had started as a professional assignment was evolving into a meaningful exchange between two different, yet increasingly connected, individuals. As they cleaned up, John felt a deep sense of satisfaction. "Thanks for today, Mira. I've learned a lot, not just about your art, but about you." Mira smiled, her eyes reflecting a warm light. "And I, about you and your world. It seems we have much to teach each other." John nodded, looking forward to the days ahead. "Definitely. And there's so much more I want to show you." Their cultural exchange had not only bridged their worlds, but had started to weave a bond that was both unexpected and profoundly enriching. As they walked back to their quarters, both were silently grateful for the unfolding journey, full of anticipation for what the next day would bring. Chapter 4. A Spark Ignites. The following evening, John decided to introduce Mira to another aspect of human culture: music. They attended a small, live concert in a cozy venue known for its acoustic sessions. As they settled into their seats, the lights dimmed, and the first chords of a guitar filled the room, followed by a soothing voice. "This is what I wanted you to experience," John whispered to Mira as the music swelled around them. "There's something about live music. It's like you can feel the emotions in the air." Mira nodded, her eyes fixed on the performers. "It's enchanting," she said. "On Illa, music is more structured, less spontaneous. This feels very personal." As the evening progressed, they enjoyed various artists, each bringing their own style and stories to the stage. Mira was visibly moved by the performances, her earlier reservations melting away with each song. After the concert, they walked through a quiet park, the night air cool and refreshing. "Did you enjoy the music?" John asked, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. "I did," Mira replied, wrapping her arms around herself against the chill. "It's another layer of your world that I find captivating." They paused by a softly lit fountain, watching the water dance in the breeze. It was a peaceful moment, and John felt a connection between them, strengthened by their shared experiences. "Mira, John started, then hesitated, unsure how to express what he was feeling. "Yes." Mira turned to him, her gaze encouraging. "I just want to say that I'm really glad I met you." "Tonight was special," John confessed, looking into her eyes, which reflected the fountain's gentle light. Myra's expression softened, and she reached out, placing a tentative hand on his arm. "I am glad too, John. I feel safe with you. It's a nice feeling." Encouraged by her touch, John took a small step closer. "I'm always here for you," he said, his voice low. Their eyes locked, and for a moment everything else faded away. The sound of the water, the rustle of the leaves, the distant city noise, all of it disappeared, leaving just the two of them. Mira moved closer, and John felt her breath on his face as they leaned in. When their lips finally met, the kiss was gentle, hesitant at first, but it deepened as they both responded to the rush of emotions that the night had stirred. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I wasn't expecting that," Mira murmured, a hint of wonder in her voice. "Neither was I," John admitted, smiling sheepishly. "But I don't regret it." They spent a few more minutes by the fountain, talking softly, before deciding it was time to head back. As they walked, their hands found each other's, fingers intertwining naturally. Back at the quarters, they said good night at Myra's door, their hands lingering together until the last possible moment. John retired to his room, his mind replaying the evening. The kiss had changed something between them, he knew. It wasn't just about protection or duty anymore. It was something deeper, something personal. He fell asleep with a smile, knowing that tomorrow would bring a new dimension to their relationship. Meanwhile, Mira lay in her bed, her thoughts a whirlwind of human music, gentle words, and the memory of John's lips on hers. For the first time since her arrival on Earth, she felt an emotion she hadn't anticipated: happiness. Chapter 5. Complications Arise. John sat on the edge of his bed, tying his boots, when his communicator buzzed. It was Helen. "Morning, John. I need you to check in on Mira. She seemed out of sorts last night. Maybe she's just tired, but give her a read and let me know if anything feels off." "Sure," John replied, already standing. "I'll take a look." He made his way to Myra's room. When he knocked, her soft voice answered, "Come in." Mira was seated on the low couch by the window, looking out at the city. Her luminescent skin seemed dimmer today, her usual calm replaced by a subtle tension. "Morning," John greeted, stepping inside and closing the door. "How are you feeling?" "I am fine," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. He pulled up a chair across from her. "You don't sound fine. Is something bothering you?" Mira hesitated, her gaze never leaving the skyline. "Last night I had a dream. It was not pleasant." John leaned forward. "A bad dream, huh? What was it about?" She shook her head. "It's difficult to explain. It was memories, but not just mine. Memories of my people's past, of our long years of isolation, and of the challenges we faced when we first ventured beyond Illa." John nodded slowly, sensing her reluctance to share too much. "You don't have to explain if you don't want to, but I'm here if you need to talk." Mira turned her eyes to him, searching his expression. "You truly mean that?" "Yeah," John said, leaning back. "I'm not just your guard. I'm someone who cares about what happens to you. Mira offered a faint smile. Thank you, John. That means a great deal to me. They sat in silence for a moment before Mira spoke again. I would like to visit a place that feels more natural, somewhere away from the tall buildings and endless movement. I think it would help me feel balanced again. Sure, John said. There's a botanical garden not far from here. We could take a walk there, get some fresh air. That would be wonderful, Mira said, her smile becoming more genuine. Thank you. The botanical garden was a sprawling, tranquil retreat filled with winding paths and lush greenery. Myra's mood lifted almost immediately as she walked among the trees and flowers, her fingers brushing lightly over leaves and petals. This is beautiful, she said, turning to John. I feel more at ease here. It reminds me, in a way, of the quiet spaces on Illa. John nodded. I thought you'd like it. Sometimes you just need to step away from the noise. As they continued their walk, they passed a small pond where koi fish glided lazily through the water. Mira stopped, captivated by the colorful creatures. What are these? Koi fish, John explained. They're ornamental fish, bred for their beauty. They move so gracefully, Mira said, kneeling by the edge to watch them. They remind me of the cerulean gliders we have back home. They're creatures of the air, not the water, but they have the same elegant movements. John watched her, smiling. I'd like to see those one day. Mira looked up at him. Perhaps you will. Their peaceful walk was interrupted by the buzz of John's communicator. He stepped aside to answer it, his expression hardening as he listened. When he returned to Mira, his usual calm seemed frayed. "What is it?" she asked, sensing his unease. "There's been a delay with your buyer," John said carefully. "I don't know how long it'll be, but I wanted to let you know so you're not left wondering." Mira frowned. "What does this mean for me? Will I have to remain here indefinitely?" "Not indefinitely," John assured her. "But it might be longer than we planned. In the meantime, we'll keep doing what we're doing. You're safe, and I'll make sure you stay that way." Mira nodded, though her concern lingered. "Thank you for telling me." Back at their quarters, Mira tried to lose herself in her art, but her unease grew as the hours passed. John noticed her restlessness and decided to suggest something new. "How about I cook us a meal?" he offered. "Something different from the takeout we've been getting." Myra's eyes lit up. "You can cook." "Not as well as I'd like to," John admitted, "but I can make something decent. Let's see how it goes." In the small kitchen, John worked with the limited ingredients on hand. Mira joined him, curious about each step. "Why do you do it like that?" she asked, watching as he chopped vegetables and stirred sauces. "Because it's the only way I know," John said with a grin. "Feel free to criticize after you taste it." When the meal was finally ready, they sat down together and shared a hearty laugh as Mira cautiously took her first bite. "It's not bad," she said, clearly surprised. "Not exactly a glowing review," John replied, feigning offense. "No, I mean it's good," Mira said, smiling. "Better than I expected." They finished the meal, and Mira seemed to relax more. John could see that the distraction helped, even if only a little. He silently vowed to keep her spirits up, no matter how long they had to wait. Chapter 6. A Plot Uncovered. The soft hum of Myra's artistic equipment filled the room as John stood near the door, checking the latest update from Helen. The delay with Myra's buyer had stretched on longer than anyone expected, and the situation was beginning to feel odd. "Mira, have you noticed anything unusual recently?" John asked, pocketing his communicator. "Anything out of the ordinary? Strange messages, unfamiliar faces?" She looked up from her work, a delicate shimmering design spread across a canvas-like material. "No, nothing unusual. Why do you ask?" John hesitated. "Something about this delay isn't sitting right with me. It's not just the timing. It's the lack of information. I've been in this line of work long enough to know when something doesn't add up." Myra's brows furrowed slightly. "You believe there may be a problem?" "I don't know yet," John admitted. "But I want to keep my ears open. If there's a chance someone's playing games, I need to figure out who and why before it reaches us." She set her brush down carefully, her expression thoughtful. "What can I do to help?" "For now," John said, "just let me know if you notice anything. Any strange communications, someone trying to contact you directly, that sort of thing. If I need you to do more, I'll let you know." Mira nodded. "I will keep watch. And you? What will you do?" "I'll start by checking in with some old contacts," John said, his voice firm. "People who might know more about this buyer or their connections. And I'll keep a closer eye on any activity around our location." Over the next few days, John worked his network quietly, contacting trusted friends and colleagues who could pull strings in the underworld of private security and interstellar deals. One name kept coming up in his inquiries: Larsen Vorek, a mid-level fixer with a reputation for getting involved in shady transactions. Vorek wasn't the buyer, but it appeared he might have facilitated the arrangement. "Who is this Larsen Vorek?" Mira asked one evening after John shared his findings. "Someone who connects dots between buyers and sellers," John explained. "If Vorek's involved, it might mean the buyer isn't who they appear to be." Mira looked concerned. "Does this mean I'm in danger?" "I don't think so, not yet," John said. "But it means I need to tread carefully. Vorek's not someone you deal with directly, unless you're desperate or running a scheme." Mira considered this, her expression calm but serious. "If this Vorek person has information, how will you get it?" "Carefully," John said. "I'll reach out to one of his associates, someone I know from my time in the service. If I can find out more about the buyer's real intentions, we'll be able to plan our next steps." Mira nodded, trusting his judgment. "If you need my help, tell me. I do not wish to remain idle if I can contribute." John gave her a reassuring smile. "I'll let you know. For now, just keep doing what you're doing. I'll handle the rest." Later that night, John sat at his desk, poring over the notes and messages he had gathered. A pattern was emerging, an irregular series of payments that didn't match the buyer's usual financial profile. It suggested someone was funding this purchase under false pretenses. "Who are you really?" John murmured to himself, staring at the buyer's dossier. "And what do you want with Mira?" A faint knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Mira stood there, looking uncertain. "May I come in?" "Of course," John said, motioning for her to take a seat. "I felt restless," she admitted. "This delay. It weighs on me, and I sensed your concern earlier." "I am concerned," John said, deciding to be honest. "I think there's more going on here than just a delayed buyer." She studied him, her luminous eyes searching his face. "Do you think they want to harm me?" "I don't know," he replied, "but I'm going to find out. And if there's any risk, I'll do whatever it takes to protect you." Mira reached out, lightly resting a hand on his arm. "I trust you, John. Whatever comes, I believe you will do what is right." Her words settled over him like a steadying force. He met her gaze, nodded, and said, "I won't let you down." The next day, John arranged a discreet meeting with one of Vorek's known associates, a former mercenary named Callan. They met in a crowded marketplace where no one would notice two people talking near a stall selling off-world spices. "Callan," John greeted, keeping his tone casual. "John." "It's been a while," Callan replied, equally relaxed on the surface. "What can I do for you?" "I need some information on a deal Vorek brokered," John said. "A high-value purchase from a Ilari artisan. Ring any bells?" Callan's expression darkened slightly, but he nodded. "I know the one. The buyer's no collector. They're connected to a syndicate that traffics rare species and cultural artifacts." John's jaw tightened. "You're sure?" "Sure as the scars on my back," Callan said grimly. "If you've got the Ilari in question, you need to get her out of there. Fast. Once that buyer arrives, it won't be a friendly handoff." John's mind raced. This wasn't just a delay. It was a calculated move to ensure Mira ended up in the wrong hands. He thanked Callan and quickly returned to Mira. When he walked through the door, Mira looked up from her art. She could tell from his face that something had changed. "What have you learned?" she asked. John sat down, leaning forward. "The buyer isn't who they claim to be. They're part of a group that deals in trafficking rare beings and cultural treasures. If we let this play out, you're going to end up in their hands. We need to act now." Mira absorbed the news in silence, then said firmly, "What must we do?" John met her steady gaze. "We plan a way out, tonight." Chapter 7. The Decision. The quiet hum of the building's security systems provided the only sound as John and Mira reviewed the escape plan. John's makeshift map, a holographic projection of the facility, hovered over the table. "We'll take this maintenance corridor," John said, pointing to a narrow path that skirted the main surveillance zones. "It's not well monitored, and we can reach the lower hangar from there." Mira nodded, studying the route. "What if we are intercepted?" "I'll handle it," John replied. "The key is speed. Once we're in the hangar, we'll board the transport I've arranged. The pilot owes me a favor. He won't ask questions." Mira hesitated. "And if we are pursued?" John leaned closer, his expression firm. "We won't be. Not if we keep to the plan. I've disabled the trackers in your quarters. They won't realize you're missing until it's too late." "I trust you," Mira said, placing a hand on his arm. "I will follow your lead." John gave her a brief nod. "Then let's do this." They left Myra's quarters under the guise of an early morning walk. The halls were deserted, the staff not yet on duty. John walked ahead, his senses heightened, while Mira kept close behind, her soft footsteps barely audible. At the maintenance corridor entrance, John used a small device to disable the security panel. The door slid open with a faint whoosh, revealing the dimly lit path beyond. "This way," John said, ushering Mira inside. The door closed behind them, and the air grew cooler. The corridor smelled faintly of lubricants and metal, a stark contrast to the pristine main areas. As they moved deeper into the facility, Mira spoke quietly. "I never imagined I would need to escape like this. It feels surreal." "Sometimes life takes unexpected turns," John replied. "But I'm here to make sure you get through it." Myra's voice softened. "Thank you, John, for everything." They reached the lower hangar without incident. A small cargo vessel awaited them, its pilot already inside. The vessel's exterior was unassuming, perfect for slipping past the facility's scanners. John led Mira up the ramp. The pilot, a gruff man named Cale, greeted them with a nod. "You're cutting it close, John." "We're here, aren't we?" John said, clasping Cale's arm in a friendly gesture. "Ready to go?" "Ready when you are," Cale replied, retreating to the cockpit. Mira settled into one of the passenger seats, her hands clasped in her lap. John took the seat beside her, his posture relaxed but his eyes constantly scanning. As the engines hummed to life, Mira glanced at John. "What will happen after this? Where will we go?" "We'll get you to a neutral zone first," John said. "Somewhere safe. From there, we can figure out the next step, whether that's contacting your people, finding asylum, or something else." Mira nodded slowly. "It feels strange to have no clear destination. I've always had a path laid out for me." "Well, maybe this is your chance to make your own path," John said with a small smile. "You've got the talent and the intelligence. I have no doubt you'll figure it out." Mira looked down at her hands, then back at John. "I hope so. But I also know I wouldn't be here without you." Before John could respond, the ship's comms crackled. "We're taking off," Cale announced. "Hang on." The vessel lifted smoothly, and the facility's lights grew distant below. John and Mira exchanged a glance, relief washing over them. They had made it out, at least for now. Chapter 8. Freedom's Flight. The cargo vessel glided silently through the void of space, its trajectory carefully plotted to avoid heavily monitored trade routes. John and Mira sat together in the small common area, their conversation muted by the ship's steady hum. "We should be reaching the neutral zone soon," John said, looking up from a handheld navigation device. "Once we're there, we can arrange for you to contact your people." Mira leaned back in her seat, her expression thoughtful. "And what about you? What will you do after this?" "I haven't thought that far ahead," John admitted. "My job was to keep you safe and make sure you weren't handed off to the wrong people. Once you're secure, I'll figure it out." Mira tilted her head. "You've done more than protect me. You've shown me kindness, understanding, and a willingness to risk everything. That's not something I will forget." John met her gaze, his tone sincere. "You've given me something too. Perspective. I never expected to connect with someone like this, especially under these circumstances. It's been unexpected, but I wouldn't trade it." Myra's smile was soft. "Neither would I." Before either could say more, the comm system buzzed, and Cale's voice came through. "We're nearing the neutral zone. Should be clear of any pursuers." John rose, gesturing for Mira to follow him to the cockpit. As they entered, they saw the expansive view of the neutral sector on the main screen, a vast, unclaimed area of space known for its independent stations and lack of central authority. "This is as far as I go," Cale said. "I'll get you close enough to dock at one of the orbital stations. After that, you're on your own." John nodded. "That's all we need." "Thanks, Cale." Mira stepped forward, addressing Cale directly. "Your assistance is greatly appreciated. You have given us a chance we may not have had otherwise." Cale gave a small nod, his gruff demeanor softening slightly. "Just be careful. Neutral zones aren't lawless, but they aren't exactly safe either. Keep your guard up." As the ship docked with a quiet hiss, John and Mira prepared to disembark. The station was bustling with activity, a mix of traders, independent miners, and travelers of all species. The environment was lively, but carried an undercurrent of tension, a reminder that everyone here had their own agenda. "We'll find a secure terminal and get you in touch with your people," John said, guiding Mira through the crowd. They located a private booth in the communications sector. Mira sat down, her fingers hovering over the console's controls. John stood by her side, watching as she connected to a Ilari diplomatic channel. The screen flickered, then resolved into the face of a Ilari elder. "Mira," the elder said, relief evident in his voice. "We feared the worst when we lost contact. Are you unharmed?" "I am safe," Mira replied, her voice steady. "Thanks to John, who ensured my escape. I need assistance to return home." The elder nodded solemnly. We will dispatch a ship immediately. Until then, remain in that neutral zone. I will instruct our agents to provide any support you require." Mira thanked the elder and ended the transmission. When she turned back to John, her expression was a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "My people will come for me soon. I will have to leave." John smiled faintly. "That's the plan. You'll be safe with them." "I will miss you," Mira said softly. "You have become important to me." John stepped closer, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "I'll miss you too, Mira. I've never met anyone like you." They stood there for a moment, the station's noise fading into the background. Then, with a quiet understanding, they made their way back to the docking area. They had accomplished what they set out to do. Mira was safe, and her future no longer in the hands of a corrupt buyer. As they waited for her transport to arrive, John felt a sense of peace, knowing he had done what was right. The choices they had made, every step of the way, had led them to this moment of freedom.